Alrighty, welcome in on this gloomy and rainy Thursday. The perfect time to actually introduce you to today's Behind the Story. Thank you so much for joining us here at the live desk. I'm Janae Hancock, joined by anchor Zac Summers. Zac, before we jump into everything, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. Trying to stay dry.
Trying to stay dry, trying to stay awake actually, because the gloomy weather is actually putting me to
I know
sleep
this is
just a
the
little bit.
perfect weather to just be snuggled up under a blanket,
Yep.
watching like the latest Netflix show.
Netflix show, as well as this new story that you've been working on. See
yeah.
how I kind of went into
I
it there?
did. I see what you did there.
So embracing the prepper way of life. First of all, before we kind of jump into the story and who you talk to, who are preppers? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think when you hear prepper, you think doomsday preppers, the folks who are preparing for the end of the world. But they are so much more than that, this community. And the research and data shows that. So I had actually been reading an article that kind of detailed some of this latest data from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I thought, I wonder what that looks like here in Kansas City. And I pitched the story in one of our special projects meeting, and surprisingly, everyone was on board with it. They said, yeah, we need to do this story. So then the challenge was finding the right voices for this story. And, you know, that was probably the hardest part, finding the right people. But it turns out that there is a survival store north of the river in Northmore, near Riverside, basically. And it's about one of the only survival stores in the metro. So I had reached out to them. I'm like, hey, this is the story I'm trying to do. I'm trying to highlight how the prepper movement, if you will, is diversified, because the data shows that, like, it's the number of people who are identifying as preppers has like doubled since they started recording this data, at least releasing it publicly. And with that too, the folks that are part of this, they look way different than what you would assume. I think a lot of folks would think doomsday preppers, probably like conspiracy theorists, you know, the people in the armor, and that's just not the case, because a lot of the people who we spoke with, they're not necessarily preparing for the end of the world. They are preparing to make sure that if something were to happen, even a snowstorm or like severe weather, that, you know, they have what they need to take care of themselves. So it was a very like eye-opening experience to talk to these folks, some of whom have been doing it for more than a decade, others just started, and really get an understanding of why they do it and what it looks like. I think one of the most interesting things about it was when we asked the preppers, you know, what is it and who is a prepper, they really didn't have a good answer for that.
That's what I love about your story. At the beginning, it's kind of like,
and,
I don't,
And I did that intentionally. And one thing you'll notice throughout the story is this theme of like, here's the thing, they don't want to be defined by the word prepper. And so the theme throughout the story are these words, and you see the dictionary, and it's really to like tell this story that hey, they are more than just this one word. And that's so true in so many titles we like to throw out at anybody in any situation, you know?
Yeah, so they all have their own definition, because they all have their own reason for doing it. So I know you talked to 3 different people. Tell us a little bit more about why they decided to become a prepper.
So, you know, it just ranges. The range is great. I mean, one person we talked with really was rattled by what they saw during the 2020 not only the social justice riots, or not protests rather, that we saw, but the pandemic itself. Another one we talked with had been doing it more than a decade, and really he moved here from the West Coast, and so he was new to snow, and he just got to thinking, look, I do not want to be caught up in a snowstorm trying to navigate these icy roads. I don't want to do that. So he started prepping. And then another gentleman we talked with, he's been doing it basically all his life. He grew up in Boy Scouts, camping. His father actually worked for FEMA, so it was kind of in his blood. So we highlight those three people who come from different backgrounds, and they have various reasons as to why they do this. But it really all comes down, when you hear from all of them, it's really about just being prepared. And I know that sounds so basic, but at its core, that's what this group of people, that's what they are.
And I want to go to the father of two you have here in your story. He said his favorite tagline is, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
That's right. That's right.
And I've heard that before, but I've never heard it in this type of situation. So I think it's kind of cool to look at the reason why they're choosing to be a prepper.
Right.
And you actually tell us a little bit more about when you went inside of that survival store. What was inside of it? What did you find was the most interesting?
Well, I think for me, inside that store, the dehydrated food. I mean, and like, we're talking fruits, vegetables, meats, like beans, anything that you would find at a grocery store, you could almost find in this survival store, but it was all dehydrated.
Yeah.
And some of it could last upwards of like 25 years, which is just fascinating to me, that all that you would need to like make this food work is, some water.
Yeah.
And it brings it back to life. So
yeah.
That was super interesting. But, the other part of this story, and I don't think we have video of it, so you'll have to watch the story, is, we were able to, so originally when I pitched this story, we were going to go into an underground bunker that is about an hour outside of the city. It was up for sale, and I'm like, okay, visually, we need to tell this story, and that's a great setting. And so we were supposed to go shoot inside that bunker, but things kind of fell apart the day before, and so then we had to pivot. We're like, wait a minute, this is a TV story. We have to find a way to visually tell this story, and that's not just inside that survival store. So I started doing some digging, and I came across this company called DEFCON Underground, and they're based here locally. And there's only really about a couple of these companies, like a handful across the country, that builds these underground bunkers. And so I call Corey over at DEFCON Underground, and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to tell this story about how the prepper movement is diversifying, and visually, I think you probably deal with some of these folks on a regular basis based on, what I'm seeing on your website. Can we come out and look at these bunkers? And he was like, look, it's bare bones. And I'm like, look, I need something. Let me see for myself. And we got to the warehouse where they make these things, and I'm like, this is more than enough than what we need to tell this story. Because really, but he gave some really great insight that's included in this story. With his business, he talks about how, like, when things seem really crazy, like back in 2020, the start of when Russia invaded Ukraine. He talks about how, like, he saw a drastic spike in the number of calls and emails from people across the country.
Which is crazy to think about.
Exactly, who were wanting these bunkers. And, we talk about how it's kind of leveled off since then. But what's interesting is he goes, the people who are really serious about buying these and putting them under their homes, like, you would never know that they were preppers. And so, again, it brought home this message that this group, you can't define them like with an image or a likeness of any kind. These are just ordinary people.
They're not easy to spot.
And they just want to be ready, so they ain't got to get ready,
Self-reliance. So about those bunkers, I see here in your web story that a family of 3 can actually survive inside up to 60 days. What's inside of these bunkers typically?
So it's like bare bones, and you see this in the story, but I mean, it's not that big. It's like it's about as wide as a hallway, and as long as, I don't even know, like your standard bedroom, if you will. So it's really compact. But surprisingly, there's like everything you would need: a stove, a kitchen, a stove, sink, a toilet, storage. And so it's like really impressive. And it's like their most basic model. But we did get to see some more like advanced models, because they were actually building one of these bunkers. It wasn't this exact model, but they were building it somewhere in Tennessee for someone, and they like start bare bones. It's all steel, but what they can do, it's all based on what like the owner wants. So when it comes down to painting, features inside, furniture, if you're buying one of those bigger ones.
Yeah, that's really survival mode.
Yeah, it's really impressive what they can do with these spaces that can either look real grungy, or they can look very like above ground, if you will.
Yeah, and I don't want to give too much away. So I do want to kind of scroll through your video here to kind of give a better look at just one example.
Yeah,
let's pull that up on the screen.
You're probably going to pull up their DEFCON 5, which again is their basic model. Yes.
Okay, is that what we're looking at?
Yeah,
here?
so that gives you an idea of, and this is their basic models. Now, basically, you could add on to this by adding other bunkers, and make it even bigger. So it's just really fascinating.
Yeah,
because
this looks like a studio apartment in New York
yeah.
City.
And it probably would cost you about a studio apartment in New York City.
So what is the typical cost?
We didn't get too far into
Okay,
that part
but it
of
will
the
be
conversation
pricey.
because, again, I think if you're really serious about this, you will seek those answers out. This was really, our thinking with talking with him was, again, to visually add to the story, and for him to, he gave us insight that we would never have. I mean, he does this for a living. His company does this for a living in terms of making these underground bunkers for preppers, and he only validated what the research shows in the fact that these are everyday people that you would never really know were preppers.
That you could be walking by every single day and you would never know until they have to get into that survival mode, that preparation mode. So
well, and really I think we gotta destigmatize the word prepper, if you will. Like it's not a bad thing. If anything, these are the folks you want to know when something really gets bad.
Definitely want to be friends with them. Want to be one of those 3 people inside of this bunker. Alrighty, Zac, this is such a fascinating story. Where can people learn more? Where can they watch the full story?
Yeah, so the story's online right now, kctv5.com, or on the mobile app. It will air in its entirety tonight at 10 o'clock on KCTV5 News at 10. And, Janae, just quickly before we go, with our special projects team and our investigative unit, we get to dig up stories. And so I would challenge anybody, if you have something fascinating or interesting that you want us to look into, send it my way, Zac, Zac.Summers, SUMMERS, at KCTV5.com. Because we love the fun, we love the serious, but we like more than anything to keep our viewers informed.
Right, and I definitely want to give our viewers another way to kind of find your contact information. If they go to our website, kctv5.com, hit this little, I like to call it the little hamburger button right there. And let's see, I believe we're going to go down to station information.
See, I would just Google KCTV5 News Team.
Meet the team. If you're already on our website, you can see everyone listed there, but there's Zac right on the left side of your screen. You can find all of his contact information there and send him story ideas, as well as Angie Racono and Sharon Chen. So thank you so much for joining us here at the Live Desk for Behind the Story. We'll see you again next week.